Hello, everyone. Today, I have an amazing story for you. It is not just for your listening practice, but also to inspire you. The story is called Nothing is Free. It will show you that hard work and determination can change lives. There was a young man named Leo. He was 20 years old and lived in a small, quiet town surrounded by mountains. Leo had big dreams. He wanted to own a chain of restaurants and become a successful entrepreneur. But life was not easy for him. Leo's family was struggling financially. His father, Mark, was a mechanic, and his mother, Claire, cleaned houses to earn money. Leo's younger sister, Sophie, was just 10 years old. She looked up to him as her hero. One cold evening, Leo sat outside his small house, staring at the stars. He whispered to himself, "I want to give my family a better life, but how do I start when we barely have enough to survive?" The next day, Leo shared his dreams with his father. Mark sighed and said, "Leo, dreams are not free. If you want something, you have to fight for it. Start with what you have, even if it is small." Leo thought deeply about his father's words. Then an idea struck him. He noticed that in his town, people loved fresh bread, but they had to travel far to buy it. He decided to start selling fresh bread locally. But there was a problem. Leo had no money to buy the bread. He decided to take a chance and approach the bakery's owner, Mr. Anderson. Leo walked miles to meet Mr. Anderson. He was a grumpy old man who rarely trusted anyone. With confidence, Leo said, "Mr. Anderson, I want to sell your bread in my town, but I don't have money to buy it up front. Can you trust me for 1 week? I will sell the bread, return your money, and keep a small profit." Mr. Anderson raised an eyebrow. "And why should I trust you, young man?" he asked. Leo replied firmly, "Because I am determined, and I will work hard to prove myself." After a long pause, Mr. Anderson said, "All right, I'll give you bread for 1 week, but if you fail to pay me back, don't bother coming here again." Leo was thrilled. Early the next morning, he carried the bread back to his town and set up a small stand near the park. He greeted every passerby with energy and a smile, saying, "Fresh bread, warm and delicious." At first, people were hesitant. They didn't know if the bread was good, but Leo offered free samples. Soon, he had his first customer. By the end of the day, he had sold all the bread and made a small profit. That evening, he returned to Mr. Anderson and paid him back. The old man nodded and said, "You kept your word. Come back tomorrow." From then on, Leo worked tirelessly. Every morning, he woke up early, walked to the bakery, carried bread back to town, and sold it with passion. After 2 months, he had saved enough money to buy a small cart. This made it easier to transport more bread. One day, a customer suggested, "Leo, why don't you bake your own bread? You are good at selling, but if you bake, you'll make more profit." This idea excited Leo, but it also scared him. He had never baked anything in his life. This was the moment where Leo realized nothing is free, not success, not knowledge, not growth. If I want to succeed, I must take risks and learn, he thought. Leo couldn't stop thinking about the idea of baking his own bread. If he could bake, he wouldn't have to rely on Mr. Anderson. His profit would grow. But there was one big problem. He didn't know how to bake. Leo decided to ask Mr. Anderson for help. The next morning, after delivering his payment, Leo said, "Mr. Anderson, can you teach me how to bake?" The old man frowned. "Why should I teach you? If you bake, you won't buy from me any more. That's bad for my business." Leo looked at him and said, "You're right. But I won't forget the man who gave me my first chance. If I succeed, I'll make sure to help your bakery too." Mr. Anderson thought for a moment, then said, "Fine, but baking isn't easy. It takes time, patience, and hard work. If you're ready for that, I'll teach you." The lessons began early the next morning. Leo arrived at the bakery at 3 a.m. before the sun was up. Mr. Anderson showed him how to mix flour, knead the dough, and bake it perfectly. At first, Leo struggled. His hands hurt from kneading. His bread came out too hard or too soft. One day, after ruining another batch of bread, Leo sat down, feeling defeated. He said to himself, "Maybe I'm not good enough for this. Maybe I should give up." But then he remembered his father's words, "Dreams are not free." He realized that every mistake was teaching him something new. Giving up was not an option. The next day, Leo went back to the bakery with even more determination. He practiced every single step carefully. Slowly, his bread started improving. After 2 weeks, Mr. Anderson handed him a loaf and said, "This is perfect, Leo. You're ready?" Leo was overjoyed. He rented a small oven and began baking bread at home. His family was amazed by his hard work. Sophie, his little sister, helped him pack the bread, and his mother made tea for him while he worked late into the night. Soon, Leo wasn't just selling bread. He started making cookies and pastries too. People in the town loved his products. They said, "Leo's bread tastes better than anything we've had before." But success wasn't easy. One day, a new bakery opened in town. It was run by a young man named Eric. Eric had a big fancy shop with colorful signs and decorations. People were curious and started buying from him instead. Leo noticed his sales dropping. He felt scared. "What if I lose everything I worked so hard for?" he thought. But instead of panicking, Leo decided to improve. He listened to his customers and asked, "What do you like about Eric's bakery? What can I do better?" Some said, "Eric's shop looks clean and pretty." Others said, "His cakes have beautiful designs." Leo realized he needed to grow, not just as a baker, but as a businessman. Using his savings, he painted his cart, added bright decorations, and started offering free samples of his new pastries. He even learned how to decorate cakes by watching videos in the library. Slowly, customers returned to him. One evening, an elderly woman came to Leo and said, "I've seen many young men give up when times get hard, but you didn't. That's why we trust you." Her words filled Leo with pride. He had started with nothing, but with hard work and determination he had built something special. And this was only the beginning of his journey. Leo woke up at 4 a.m. every morning. While most of the town was still asleep, he would get out of bed, wash his face, and quickly get ready. Then he would walk all the way to Mr. Anderson's bakery, no matter how cold or dark it was outside. He would collect the fresh bread, carefully stack it in his cart, and walk back to his town. Once he reached his usual selling spot, he would set up his stand, arrange the bread neatly, and start calling out to people with a bright smile on his face. "Fresh bread, warm and delicious," he would say. He greeted every customer warmly and made sure they felt welcome. He never lost his energy, even if he was tired. After 2 months of hard work, he had saved enough money to buy a small cart. This cart made it easier to transport more bread at once, and Leo was able to sell even more each day. Business was growing, and he was feeling more confident. One day, while Leo was arranging his bread, a customer looked at him and said, "Leo, why don't you bake your own bread? You are good at selling, but if you bake it yourself, you will make more profit." Leo had never thought about this before. The idea excited him, but at the same time, it scared him. He had never baked anything in his life. He wasn't sure if he could do it. This was the moment when Leo realized something important. Nothing in life is free. Success is not free. Knowledge is not free. Growth is not free. If he wanted to succeed, he had to take risks and learn new things. That night, Leo couldn't stop thinking about the idea of baking. If he could bake his own bread, he wouldn't have to rely on Mr. Anderson anymore. He could create his own recipes and grow his business. His profit would also increase because he wouldn't have to pay for someone else's bread. But there was one big problem. He had no idea how to bake. Leo decided to ask Mr. Anderson for help. The next morning, after paying for the bread as usual, he stayed behind and spoke to the old man. "Mr. Anderson, can you teach me how to bake?" he asked with determination. Mr. Anderson frowned and crossed his arms. "Why should I teach you? If you learn to bake, you won't need to buy from me any more. That's bad for my business." Leo thought for a moment and then said, "You're right, but I will never forget the man who gave me my first chance. If I succeed, I will make sure to help your bakery too." Mr. Anderson looked at Leo carefully. He saw the determination in the young man's eyes. After a long pause, he finally said, "Fine. But listen carefully. Baking isn't easy. It takes time, patience, and hard work. If you're ready for that, I will teach you." Leo nodded eagerly. "I'm ready." The next morning, Leo arrived at the bakery even earlier than before, at 3 a.m., before the sun was up. Mr. Anderson showed him how to mix flour, knead the dough, and bake it to perfection. At first, Leo struggled. His hands hurt from kneading the dough, and his arms ached from carrying heavy bags of flour. Sometimes his bread came out too hard, sometimes too soft. One day, after ruining another batch of bread, Leo sat down, feeling defeated. He looked at the burnt loaves in front of him and sighed. Maybe I'm not good enough for this, he thought. Maybe I should give up. But then he remembered his father's words. Dreams are not free. He realized that every mistake was teaching him something new. Giving up was not an option. He had worked too hard to stop now. The next day, Leo returned to the bakery with even more determination. He paid close attention to every detail. He practiced kneading the dough carefully, measuring the ingredients correctly, and controlling the oven temperature. Slowly, his bread started improving. It took 2 more weeks, but one day Mr. Anderson handed him a loaf and said, "This is perfect, Leo. You're ready." Leo was overjoyed. He felt proud of himself for not giving up. He rented a small oven and started baking bread at home. His mother and sister were amazed by his dedication. Sophie, his little sister, helped him pack the bread into bags, and his mother made tea for him while he worked late into the night. Soon, Leo wasn't just selling bread, he started making cookies and pastries, too. He experimented with different flavors and ingredients. People in the town loved his products. They would say, "Leo's bread tastes better than anything we've had before." But success wasn't easy. Making bread at home was challenging. Leo's small oven could only bake a few loaves at a time. Sometimes he ran out of ingredients and had to rush to the market before sunrise. Other times, he felt so tired that he could barely keep his eyes open while working, but he refused to quit. He woke up early every morning and worked until late at night. His hands were always covered in flour, and his clothes smelled like freshly baked bread. He kept going, no matter how hard it was. One evening, after a long day of baking, Sophie sat beside him and said, "Leo, you work so hard. I know one day you will have your own big bakery." Leo smiled and ruffled her hair. "That's the dream, Sophie, and dreams are not free." Every challenge he faced only made him stronger. He knew that he was on the right path. No matter how difficult things became, he would keep moving forward, because he had learned the most important lesson of all. Success is never given. It is earned. One day, a new bakery opened in the town. It was run by a young man named Eric. Eric had a big, fancy shop with colorful signs and beautiful decorations. People were curious about the new bakery and started buying from him instead of Leo. Leo noticed that his sales were dropping. He felt scared. What if he lost everything he had worked so hard for? But instead of panicking, Leo decided to improve. He wanted to understand why people were going to Eric's bakery. So he started asking his customers, "What do you like about Eric's bakery? What can I do better?" Some people said, "Eric's shop looks very clean and pretty." Others said, "His cakes have beautiful designs." Leo realized that he needed to grow, not just as a baker, but also as a businessman. Using his savings, Leo painted his cart, added bright decorations, and started offering free samples of his new pastries. He even went to the library to watch videos about cake decoration and learned how to make his cakes look more attractive. Slowly, customers returned to him. One evening, an elderly woman came to Leo and said, "I have seen many young men give up when times get hard, but you didn't. That's why we trust you." Her words filled Leo with pride. Months passed, and Leo's business grew even more. He saved enough money to rent a small shop. It wasn't as big as Eric's, but it was warm and welcoming. He named it Leo's Fresh Bakes. Every morning he woke up before sunrise, baked fresh bread, and opened his shop with a smile. His parents and sister helped him. Sophie, now 11 years old, loved talking to customers, and Claire managed the accounts. Their family business was growing, and Leo felt proud. But he knew this was not the end of his journey. He wanted to reach more people, make his family proud, and prove to himself that anything is possible with hard work. Leo's Fresh Bakes was becoming the heart of the town. People loved his fresh bread, cakes, and pastries. Business was doing well, and his family was proud of him. But life was not done testing Leo. One stormy night, as Leo was closing his shop, he noticed smoke coming from inside. His heart started beating fast. He ran inside and saw that a small fire had started near the oven. Without wasting any time, he grabbed a bucket of water and quickly put out the flames. But when the fire was gone, he looked around and saw that much of his equipment was damaged. The shelves were blackened with smoke, and the oven was no longer working properly. The next morning, when the townspeople heard about the fire, they came to check on Leo. Some said, "Oh no, what will Leo do now?" Others whispered, "Maybe this is the end for him." Leo felt heartbroken, but he refused to give up. He stood outside his bakery, took a deep breath, and said, "This is just another challenge. I have faced struggles before, and I will face this too. I won't give up." He sat down with his family and made a plan. He counted how much money he had saved and realized it was not enough to replace all the damaged equipment. For a moment, fear crept into his heart. But then he remembered his journey. He remembered how he had started with nothing but a dream and a lot of hard work. If he could build a business from nothing, he could rebuild it again. Leo decided to take action. He repaired whatever he could and cleaned the shop with the help of his family. Sophie wiped the counters, and Claire helped scrub the walls. His father checked the oven and said, "It needs to be replaced, but we can find a way." Instead of feeling sorry for himself, Leo got back to work. He used a small oven at home to bake a few loaves of bread and sold them outside the shop. People saw his determination and felt inspired. They started supporting him. "Leo, we believe in you," one man said. "You helped this town with your fresh bread. Now let us help you." A few customers offered to pay in advance for their bread so that Leo could use the money to fix his bakery. Others helped by lending him baking trays and ingredients. Day by day, Leo's shop started to come back to life. He worked harder than ever, and soon Leo's fresh bakes was running again. One evening, Eric, the owner of the fancy bakery, walked into Leo's shop. He looked around and said, "I heard what happened. I must admit, I thought you wouldn't recover, but you did." Leo smiled and said, "Hard work and determination can fix anything." Eric nodded. "I respect that," he said. "Business is not just about fancy signs and decorations. It's about heart. And you have that." Leo's heart swelled with pride. He realized that success was not about never failing. It was about getting back up every time life knocked him down. With the support of his family, his customers, and his own determination, he had rebuilt his bakery and proved to himself that nothing is impossible. As Leo stood outside his shop that night, looking at the bright lights and the happy customers inside, he smiled. He had started with nothing. He had faced competition, failure, and even disaster. But through it all, he had learned the most important lesson of all. Nothing is free. Success must be earned, and dreams must be fought for. And he was ready to keep fighting for his dreams no matter what came next. Instead of sitting and worrying, Leo decided to take action. He knew that feeling sad would not fix anything. He needed a plan. His bakery was damaged, and he did not have enough money to replace all the equipment. But he refused to give up. He had come too far to stop now. Leo decided to seek advice. He went to Mr. Anderson, the man who had given him his first chance. Even though Mr. Anderson had retired, Leo respected his wisdom. He found Mr. Anderson sitting on his porch, drinking tea. "Sir, I need advice," Leo said. "What would you do if you were me?" Mr. Anderson smiled. "Leo, you already know the answer. You have taught yourself that nothing is free. Work harder, believe in yourself, and people will believe in you too." Leo felt a new strength inside him. He would not wait for someone to rescue him. He would rebuild his bakery no matter how hard it was. That night, he sat down with his family and told them his plan. "I will start baking again with the little equipment I have left. It won't be much at first, but I will keep serving my customers. I won't let them down." His parents and sister supported him. His mother, Claire, said, "We believe in you, Leo. We will help in any way we can." The next morning, Leo got up early and started baking at home. He could not make as much bread as before, but he did his best. He went to the town square and told his customers, "I don't have my bakery right now, but I still have my passion. I will continue to bake, even if it's just a small amount for now." The townspeople admired his courage. They saw how hard he worked, and they wanted to help. Some donated ingredients. Others gave small amounts of money. A few even helped him clean and repair his bakery. One man said, "Leo, we have watched you grow from a small bread seller to a great baker. You never gave up, so we won't give up on you." Leo realized something important that day. When you work hard and never give up, people notice. They want to help someone who helps themselves. Day by day, his bakery started to come back to life. He painted the walls, cleaned the floors, and replaced what he could. He still could not afford all the new equipment, but he made do with what he had. Months passed. Leo worked harder than ever. Finally, the day arrived when he could reopen his bakery. It was better than before. The walls were fresh and bright. The smell of warm bread filled the air. He had even added new items to the menu: cupcakes, muffins, and beautifully decorated cakes. On the day of the grand reopening, the town gathered to celebrate. Even the mayor came. The mayor smiled and said, "Leo, you are a true inspiration. You have shown us all that with determination anything is possible." Leo stood in front of the crowd, looking at the faces of the people who had supported him. He felt proud, but more than that, he felt grateful. "I want to thank each one of you," Leo said. "You have taught me that nothing in life is free, not success, not respect, not love. Everything must be earned with hard work, patience, and persistence. Never let failure stop you. Every challenge is just a step to something greater." The crowd cheered. Leo's bakery was not just a place to buy bread. It had become a symbol of hope. People from other towns came to visit and meet the young man who never gave up. Leo's story teaches us many things. 1. Dreams are not free. They require hard work and sacrifice. 2. Failure is not the end. It is a chance to learn and grow stronger. 3. Help yourself first. When people see your effort, they will support you. 4. Never give up. The darkest moments are often just before success. Leo did not just build a bakery. He built a life full of purpose, respect, and pride. And so can you. Whatever your dream is, do not stop chasing it. Remember, nothing is free, but everything is possible.